Hello everybody, Paul Sheriff here with Pluralsight. This module is how to determine JavaScript variable data types. The goals for this module are to explore the different data types that are available, and these include primitives and objects. We're going to learn how to determine data types using the typeof operator, a constructor property, and the instanceof operator. Let's get started. JavaScript, unlike other languages, only has a few primitive data types built in. It has Boolean, which can be true or false, null, which is no value, undefined, which means you've declared a variable but has no value, and a number, integers, decimals, float, etc. all are represented by number, and string. String is a series, an array, of characters. These are the only primitive data types that are available in JavaScript. There are a few object data types as well, such as an array, so you build it with new array, and that's a collection of values. There's an error, which contains a name and an error message. There's a function, which is a block of code. There's an object, which is a wrapper around any of the other data types. And reg expression, so a regular expression. These are the built-in object data types. We also have these that are similar to the primitives, which is a new Boolean, so very similar to the primitive Boolean, but it is an object that contains true or false. New number, so a number is an object that contains a numeric value, again similar to number. Or new string, an object that contains a character or a series of characters. Now, all of these are like the primitives, so what I want you to do is make sure you use the primitives, Boolean, number, or string, instead of these whenever possible. These types of objects take up more memory space, and they are slower to access. Since we don't declare a data type when we create a variable in JavaScript, it means we need to somehow have a mechanism to find out what that data type is in the variable at any given time in the application. We can use the typeof operator to do that. What it'll do is return the data type of the passed-in expression. So it returns a string value such as string or number or object or whatever that data type is in that specific variable or expression. So, for example, if you do a console.log on the type of hello, it prints string. If we do a console.log type of 4, it prints number. And this works for expressions as well. So if you have an expression like 4 times 2, whatever that returns will be then printed out from the type of. So let's take a look at a demo of using the typeof operator. In this function, typeofSample, I'm declaring several different types of variables. So I've got let product equal to one of the products in the products array. Products array is declared up here. I then have an intro date equals to a new date. I have an str value equal to a new string. I have isActive equal false. I have let result, which will be undefined, and let value equal null. Now, what I'm doing then is, as you can see on lines 50 through 59, I'm doing a series of console.logs to log each one of the outputs from the typeof. So the first one is typeof_products. The next one, typeof product. So all the way down the line here, and you can see even the last one on line 59, typeofSample. That's the actual name of the function. So let's go ahead and try this out and see what each one reports back to us. So here we can see the underscore products, that's the array, is an object. When I get just the single product back, that's also an object. Product.productID is a number. Product.productNumber is a string. str value, that's an object. Intro date is an object. And the reason why is let's take a look back at those str value and intro date. If you remember, right here on lines 44 and 45, those are using the object types, not the primitives. So those are actually objects. So let's go back. So then we see isActive is a Boolean. we see result equals undefined, value equals object, and type of sample is a function. So those are the various data types that we have. Like I said, try to use the primitives as much as possible and avoid those object data types. Let's now talk about object data types and the constructor property. All object data types inherit from object. Not the primitives though, just the objects. So object has a constructor property, and this constructor property returns a reference to the object itself. It's from this that we can find out a few things about this object. So if we were to look at this little screenshot here, you can see I've got products equals function array, product equals function object. These are the constructor properties displayed in the console.log. This is what we're going to see in just a minute in our demo. Object literals and primitives are cast to objects for display. So if we actually say, hey, let's do this in a console.log and take a primitive and apply the constructor property to it, it casts it to an object data type first, then it can apply the constructor property. So let's take a look at a demo of using our constructor property with various data types. In this constructor sample, again, I'm defining some various values here, and then we're going to go and look at the constructor property. But I want to run this for you first so we can take a look at it here. So this is what we get. We get underscore products equals function, array, and then some curly braces, and then some native code. So what the constructor property does is it's a kind of an internal representation of this particular object. So an array looks like this: product equals function object. Product.product ID is function number. Now remember, these are primitives, product ID and product number. So what it does is it casts those primitive to the appropriate object like number or string. Now intro date was defined as a new date, so that is an object. Comes back as function date. String value is defined as new string, so it comes back as function string. So you get the idea here. So this constructor property, when you apply the toString, it just simply returns a string that tells you what data type it is. Pretty simple. If we look back here at the code, you can see what that looks like. Underscore products on line 49, dot constructor dot toString. On line 50, product dot constructor dot toString. Now, product.productID.constructor. Product ID is a primitive, but it casts it to the object and then gives it the property constructor so that we can then report that back. And all we get back is a string that we can then output. Very simple. The constructor property is nice, but it simply returns a string. It'd be nice if we had some functions that would return a Boolean to say something like isArray or isDate. Well, we can do that by just creating a couple little helper functions ourselves. Let's take a look at those. So what can we do with this? Well, I've got another function down here called helper functions sample. And what I've done in this particular function is I've done let intro date equals new date. I've got let result, which is undefined, and let value equals null. On lines 66 and 67, what I've done is I'm looking at that array that I had, that underscore products array, and I wrote a little helper function called isArray that will return a Boolean true or false. Same thing for isDate. It returns a true or a false. Then I've got another one on lines 70 and 71 that's isNull or undefined. So if we take a look down here, we can see these helper functions. Line 75, return value.constructor.toString. Take the constructor property of the value that we pass in, convert it to a string, and then use the index_of method to see if the keyword array is in there. And if it is, it'll give us something back which is greater than -1, which means we found it. This expression returns a true. Same thing with the isDate, exact same design pattern. So we could do this for array, for a date, for function, for string. We could add all of these there, right? And then we'd have these nice little is methods that give us back a true or false. Same thing for isNull or undefined down here. We can return value triple equal null or value triple equal undefined. We now have a Boolean that'll tell us whether something is null or undefined. Again, we can run this. So as you can see here, underscore products is array, true. Intro date is date, true. Null or undefined, right? So this is some nice little helper functions to have in place for your JavaScript applications. Let's now take a look at the instance of operator. Now this one is different than the type of because this one tests if a specific object inherits from the object data type. Remember, everything inherits from object data type except the primitives. So it tests for a specific type of object or for object itself. All right, let's take a look at the instance of operator. In this function, instance of sample, I'm going to create a new instance of a product class. So if we take a look down here, I've got this function product, pass in a few of the properties, set those properties, and that's what I'm doing. I'm creating a new product. Then on line 45, let dt equals new date, let name equals new string, let value equal a simple string. So I've got a primitive in value. All the rest of these are objects. So now what we can do is we can test. Look at line 49, prod instance of product. So this is going to return a true or false. Prod instance of object on line 50, right? So this will return a true or a false. dt instance of date, dt instance of object. So we're going to take a look at what each one of these brings back. Let's go ahead and run this, and we'll take a look. Our product function, which is a product class, returns true that it is an instance of product, as you'd expect. But prod is an instance of object, also returns true because everything inherits from object. Same thing with dt. It's a new date, right? So it's using the date object, so it's a date and it's an object. Name, instance of string, absolutely. If we were to do name instance of object, since it was declared with new string, yes, it would be an object as well. However, the primitive, which is our variable value, instance of string, no, it's not. Remember, instance of only checks for object data types. Primitives are not objects. So those are your different operators there, type of and instance of, for determining the data type of variables. In this module, we learned that it's important to understand the difference between primitives and objects. There is a difference between those two, and it's very important to use primitives wherever possible. So use those first, and then go to objects if you need them. Remember, objects are slower to access. They take up a little bit more memory. Now, we took a look at the type of and the instance of operators for helping us detect different data types. We use type of for checking the type, and we use instance of for checking what type of object it specifically is. We can also use the constructor property, and this we can use on both objects and primitives. Remember that with the primitives, it can actually cast it into an object, and then we have that constructor property available to us. Coming up in the next module, we're going to talk about the use of the this keyword in different scopes, and we'll talk about the call and apply methods. I hope you'll join me for the next module.